In 1989, a single arcade cabinet could generate over $500 per week. Now, that's $26,000 per year from one machine. And the game that did it better than any other? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade edition. But here's the thing that most people don't know. This wasn't happening in traditional arcades, it was happening in Pizza Huts across America. And there's a very specific reason why. This is the story of how Konami, Pizza Hut, and 4 cartoon turtles created the most profitable beat-em-up arcade cabinet in restaurant history. Now, if you grew up in the late 80s or even the early 90s, you remember this: walking into Pizza Hut with your family, the smell of pepperoni in the air, and in the corner, that glow, the arcade cabinet calling to you. And normally your parents would be like, whatever, hand you a few quarters to keep you busy while they waited for the pizza. And if that cabinet happened to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those quarters were gone in minutes. But contrary to popular belief, this wasn't a happy accident. This was a carefully engineered business strategy that made millions of dollars, and it all started with a problem Pizza Hut needed to solve at the time. Let's go back to 1987. Now, Pizza Hut was the largest pizza chain in America at that time, but they still had a problem: wait times. Normally, when you ordered a pizza at Pizza Hut, you weren't getting the food fast. You actually were getting a sit-down dining experience. And Pizza Hut standards were the best back in the day. You had fresh dough, made-to-order pizzas, and that meant families were sitting in the restaurant for 30 to 45 minutes while waiting for their food. And here's the thing about kids back in the 80s. Back in the day, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have smartphones, we had nada, zip. We just had to sit there and be on our best behavior. But kids can get restless. I don't care how well behaved you are. And that drove parents crazy. And if you got kids today, or if your kids are grown or whatever, if you got little ones, entertaining them today is a lot easier than back in the day. Because like I said, we didn't have nothing. It was just maybe you play a game with maybe your cousin or whatever, play fight or, kick each other under the table or something like that. But you kind of had to sit still. When parents said something back in the day, you listen or you got your ass whooped. It's just that simple. So we had to let off some steam somehow. Kids today, they got smartphones. They got that little, if you've ever been in modern restaurants where they got that crappy little game that you play, a little arcade game, you put it in, you can play some bogus games. But today, kids' attention span is probably a lot smaller, but they're more entertained. But back in the day, you had the arcade. So that was a good option for parents. But Pizza Hut's competitors figured this out. And Chuck E. Cheese, the pioneers they were, they built their entire business model around that. Keep the kids entertained, parents stay longer, and they order more food. And also you got to remember Showbiz Pizza as well. Now those two would merge over time, Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese, and it would just change all the Showbiz Pizza to Chuck E. Cheese's. But you remember that jingle back in the day? Showbiz Pizza, where a kid could be a kid. It was a big deal back then. Showbiz Pizza is not like the ones they got today, like Chuck E. Cheese. Back in the day, it was a full-blown experience. We had live shows, pizza, dessert. It was great for birthday parties or just to hang out in general. But if you couldn't make it to Showbiz Pizza, you kind of had to settle for Pizza Hut. But that wasn't a bad thing. So universally, kids' wait time was the problem everybody was trying to solve. But Pizza Hut, though, even though it wasn't Showbiz Pizza, they had an advantage. They had the space, they had the traffic, and they had the profit margins to invest in something that would keep families coming back. Enter the arcade cabinet. Now, by 1988, Pizza Hut started installing arcade cabinets in their restaurants. Not full arcades like Chuck E. Cheese, just 1 or 2 premium cabinets. High quality games that would eat quarters fast, but keep kids glued to the screen. And over time, they tested everything. Obviously starting with the older games like Pac-Man, Galaga, even the legendary Double Dragon. But they needed something special. Something that would make their kids beg their parents to go to Pizza Hut specifically. And then, in April of 1989, Konami released exactly what they needed. And it was the perfect storm. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, the Turtles weren't just popular in 1989, it was a cultural phenomenon. The cartoon was the #1 rated kids show on television at the time, and the toy line was outselling everything except Barbie. I mean, you couldn't think throwing Barbie, it is what it is, but Turtles were up there. And the first TMNT movie was about to hit theaters and would gross $135 million. That's nothing to sneeze at back in the day. And every kid in America knew Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo. And most kids wanted to be them with Halloween costumes, make-believe in the backyard, wherever you could do it. Turtle Mania was alive and well. And Konami understood the assignment. Now, Turtles Arcade wasn't just another beat-em-up. It was a technical masterpiece. 4-player simultaneous gameplay, revolutionary for 1989, and the gorgeous sprite work that looked exactly like the cartoon. They had authentic voice samples, and most importantly, it was designed to eat quarters. So let's talk about the gameplay. Now the game was designed with 6 levels, but here's the genius part that Pizza Hut knew. Most kids that played it couldn't get past level 3 on 1 credit, and the difficulty kind of ramped up pretty fast. The more turtles that played, the more enemies that came on the screen. So boss fights as well, as we know, required patterns and recognition that just, let's be real, most 8-year-old kids at the time just haven't developed yet. But at the same time, this was crucial, it never felt unfair. You always felt like you were almost winning, just one more quarter, one more try. And at a kid that age, 8 years old, yeah, that's kind of where it was. So the average play session, let's talk about that. It was 8 to 12 quarters. At 25 cents a pop, that's $2 to $3 per kid. And remember, this is 1989 money. Adjusted for inflation, that's $5 to $6 in today's economy. So imagine you're Pizza Hut. You got the typical 80s classic family of 4, 2 kids. They're waiting 30 minutes for their pizza. Dad hands them each $3 in quarters, or $3 and you just put in that change machine, and that's $6 in arcade revenue on top of the $25 pizza. Not to mention if there's other kids around. So, because you gotta remember, Turtles was iconic and genius for having those 4 players. So the more kids were there, that's where you might meet friends or something like that, and they join in to play the game with you. Even little kids that can barely reach the controller at times. And here's the beautiful part. While the kids were playing TMNT, they weren't complaining. They weren't getting restless. They were having the time of their lives. Which meant parents are relaxed, they're ordering appetizers, and they're ordering dessert. The takeaway is they're staying longer and spending more money. And Pizza Hut wasn't just making money from the arcade cabinet, they were making money from everything around it. And that's pretty cool. I mean, back in the day, Pizza Hut didn't always have turtles. Most of the times in 1989 had turtles, but I feel like what made this peanut butter and jelly perfect sandwich between Turtles and Pizza Hut was the fact that at the time, Turtles was the hottest thing in 1989, you know. So, it was the biggest kids' toy. It was cartoons were everywhere. The lunch boxes, the clothes, the outfits, the costumes, the movie, all that stuff tied in. So when you went to Pizza Hut afterwards, or after the arcade or wherever you were at, or just, after a soccer game or, band practice, wherever you're at, usually you go to Pizza Hut. And that was a treat back. Not like today where kids are spoiled and they don't even get excited when you go out to eat anymore. It's kind of the norm. But back in the day, in the 80s, yeah, the parents took you out to eat. That was a treat. So to go there and then get to play Turtles as well, that's a win-win for most kids back in the day. And it paid dividends. Not to mention you got some delicious pizza. Pizza Hut pizza from that back in the day. I don't know. Pizza Hut now, if you can find one, because they shut a lot of them down where I live at. It's not the same. The pizza's like dry, overcooked. Back in the day, I remember the Pizza Hut pizza it came with that little pizza stand inside. You open the box and it was just hot, and it had, the mozzarella cheese on there. It was great. And most times, most kids just got pepperoni and sausage, but it was just so freaking good, man. Nowadays, and then you had a little part where it stick to the cardboard. If you took it home and reheated, stick to the cardboard, a little white film cardboard it had in it. Pizza Hut was just a bomb back in the day. So and the salad bar is actually pretty good too. If you could find those old red roof Pizza Huts. I haven't seen one of those in years. I'm guessing they're still out there. I don't know. But anyway, let's get back to Pizza Hut and the Turtles. All right, let's talk numbers, because this is where it really gets interesting. So back in the day, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cabinet in 1989 cost Pizza Hut approximately about 3 G's, anywhere from $3,000 to $3,500 to purchase and install. Now that sounds like a lot, but let's check this math out. Now the average daily revenue from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cabinet in a busy Pizza Hut earns about $70 to $80 a day. That's about 280 to about 320 quarters per day. Now, if we add that up for weekly revenue, we get anywhere from $490 to $560. Now, monthly, if you add it monthly, is $2,100 to $2,400. So, at that rate, the cabinet paid for itself in 6 to 8 weeks, and everything after that, pure profit. But actually, it gets even better. Now, you actually had maintenance and costs as well. Pizza Hut didn't always own these cabinets outright. Many locations used arcade operators, companies that would install and maintain the machine in exchange for a revenue split, usually 50-50. So even if Pizza Hut was only getting half of the quarters, they had zero upfront costs, zero maintenance costs, and were still pulling in $1,000+ per month in passive income from a machine that only took up 6 square feet of floor space. And Konami, they were basically printing money at the time. Konami produced approximately about 10,000 TMNT arcade cabinets in the first production run. Now at $3,000 wholesale per cabinet, that's $30 million in hardware sales alone. Plus they were paying the creators of Turtles a licensing fee roughly 8 to 10% of cabinet sales. So everyone was winning big. Mirage Studios was getting paid, Konami was getting paid, Pizza Hut was getting paid, and kids were getting to play as their favorite turtles while eating pizzas. And by late 1989 and into 1990, turtle arcade cabinets were in the thousands of Pizza Hut locations around the US. And industries estimate turtle arcades generated over $100 million in total quarter revenue during its peak years. That's a lot of freaking money, even for 1989 and 1990. That's huge. That's 400 million quarters, 400 million times people played that game. And if it's one of those ones where it's 50 cents to start and 25 cents to continue, that's even more revenue, all while families waited for their pan pizza. But like all things, everything comes to an end. Let's talk about the decline and legacy. So, like all good things, the Pizza Hut arcade era couldn't last forever. By 1991, the landscape was changing. The Turtles arcade got a home console port on the NES. Now, it wasn't as good as the arcade version, but kids could play it at home for free. The magic was starting to fade, and that was actually a kick-ass game, Turtles at Home. That was pretty cool. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade. And then you had the entry of new arcade games that were taken over. Street Fighter II in 1991, Mortal Kombat in 1992. And these were competitive fighting games that attracted older teenagers and adults. And they weren't exactly on that family-friendly demographic Pizza Hut wanted. I mean, can you imagine that can you imagine this if you're sitting there eating pizza or whatever, you get up and you hear this scream from an arcade and somebody's actually pulled a fatality off on a little kid? That's kind of hardcore. That can be traumatizing at Pizza Hut. So you really don't want to play Mortal Kombat at Pizza Hut, and see that, that's kind of a family-friendly thing. And I have to think that Sub-Zero and Scorpion kind of don't fit that mold, especially if he rips your spine out. So yeah, they really couldn't carry games like that. And even Street Fighter, not as violent as Mortal Kombat, it's still putting off a fighting and competitive vibe. And if you know anything about Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat in the arcade, it can get very competitive, and fists could fly if you're not careful playing those two games. So, or any final competitive game like that. But Turtles, not so much. So yeah, you need a family-friendly game. Also at the same time, Pizza Hut itself was actually evolving. In the mid-1990s, they shifted their business model more towards delivery and carryout, and the dining experience became less important. So arcades took up valuable space that could be used for additional seating or kitchen expansion, and leave it to a corporation to always shoot themselves in the foot and take the fun out of everything. So cabinets started being removed, and by 1995, most Pizza Hut locations had removed their arcade cabinets entirely. And the era, guys, was over. But the legacy lives on. Today, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcades is one of the most sought out after cabinets in the retro arcade scene. And you got barcades and retro gamer venues that pay $2,000 to $4,000 for a working cabinet. And sometimes it can actually fit a higher price if the machine is in pristine condition. And then also you had modern re-releases of the game. You had Arcade 1-Up, they released a home version in 2020 that sold out immediately. And the game is available on modern consoles as well. And if you talk to anyone who grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, they remember that well. They remember that Pizza Hut, they remember those quarters, they remember being Leonardo cutting through the foot soldiers while the parents finished their stuffed crust, or salad, or in dessert even, because you stayed so long waiting for your kid to get done playing the game. So in the end, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Arcades wasn't just a video game. It was a perfect business case study as well. And it solved the problem for Pizza Hut, long before Reggie Fils-Aimé came along with the Bigfoot Pizza. But that's a story for another time. I love me some Reggie. It solved the problem for Pizza Hut, made millions for Konami, and created memories for an entire generation. All for 25 cents a play. So that's the story. That's the untold economics behind why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade was in every Pizza Hut in 1989. A $3,000 investment that generated $26,000 per year. A licensing deal that made everyone rich. And a cultural moment that we're still talking about 35 years later. So the next time you see a TMNT arcade cabinet at a barcade or a retro gaming venue, remember, that machine isn't just a piece of gaming history. It can also be a part of restaurant history. And a piece of business as well. And it all started by something so simple as Pizza Hut needing to keep kids entertained while they waited for their personal pan pizza. So what I think about the Pizza Hut era. Now, Pizza Hut for me was cool because you go in there, I like the food, I like to eat. And it was also cool to have, now I was a little older at the time. I was, this is 1989, I was in 9th grade. And I usually played Turtles at my local arcade. So to go there and play for me wasn't a big deal because I would actually play at my local arcade. My home mom and pop shop local had a pretty good Turtles game. So I'd play it there a lot, you know. But back in the day, you know, 9th grade, maybe you might play it, but kids swarmed that machine back in the day, and whenever time I would go, I'd see it there, and they kind of had that hand in hand, that promotion with them. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal. So I can only imagine in bigger cities like New York, LA, and you know, just all the burbs and stuff like that where they had pizza, because Pizza Hut was a big deal back in the day. And it was just like, I thought it was pretty ingenious how they did that. You know, used video games to actually help promote their food. I mean, not so much to advertise it, but just to have that in there, because the difference being in an arcade, you're going there for a sole mission. When you go to an arcade like Aladdin's Castle back in the day, you're going there to just play video games. Maybe you might get a slice of venue pizza outside in the strip mall part of the mall, but after you eat that, you're going into the arcade to play video games. But here, that's like a side note, and it's always going to do the same thing, keep the kids busy. I mean, if you're, I mean, I know back in the day, if you went to like the supermarket, you know, even they'd have like, and this was when I was little, they usually have the old Pac-Man machines or asteroids, whatever was out at the time. And I don't know if anybody remembers these. I talk to these about people all the time, but nobody seems to remember. Remember that little thing? It was like a little booth you went into, and it wasn't a picture booth. It was like a little cartoon thing. It had you go in there, you put 25 cents in, and it had like Woody Woodpecker or something like that, some kind of cartoon you could watch on it. Nobody seems to remember that. They even had a little curtain you could pull. Nobody remembers those things. And what sucked about, they were awesome because you were watching a cartoon, but normally it'd be some offshoot cartoon. It'd be like a, you know, Woody Woodpecker universe or whatever, but it would be some cartoon I've never seen before. It would be some generic cartoon in there, but it was still a cool piece of history. But anyway, back to what I was saying, it was kind of cool how they'd have those, sometimes those little offshoot places with just one or two arcades would do well because that's all you had. You didn't have the luxury of choosing other games and stuff like that. You'd actually could play here and there with it. So it was actually pretty cool. And for some reason, adults didn't play those little mom and pop ones. They didn't play like at the supermarket or play. If you saw her growing up at the arcade playing back in the 80s, it was usually at an arcade. I guess for status and props, because I mean, myself, for example, you know, being, you know, a freshman in high school at the time when Turtles was out, why would I cater to a bunch of kids and be like, yeah, they're not going to think you're cool. They're just going to say, get off the game, old man. That's all they're going to do. So, but in an arcade setting, you can actually be more glorified for being a gaming god. But yeah, if you have any memories of Pizza Hut pizza, like I say, me, I went a little bit. I can't sit here and speak on say I lived there, you know, like I said, I was a little older at the time. But at the same time, and there's a lot of people out there I know that was very fond family moments for you. So yeah, definitely a good time. And Turtles as well, definitely a cool game, the perfect game to have in there, ironically, with the Turtles' love for pizza. So that's gonna do it for this one, guys. I know this video is a little different from the normal ones, but I just feel like maybe just put a little fun in there with the Turtles instead of just going to straight, you know, story of just kind of give them a little more history, and then throw Pizza Hut in the mix. One more thing I want to say about Pizza Hut though, I remember back in the day, getting those personal, this is before Turtles, of course, but they had those, and they still had them. I think they might still have them now. If you remember, you remember back in the day when you had to read the books and you get that personal little pan pizza. There was no Turtles to play at the time because I was a little younger. This is probably 1986, 1987 time frame. But it was still cool that you'd read these books and get you a personal pan pizza. I remember I had the little card. I don't know where it's at. I lost it now. But it was a little card they give you in school, and I saved it for memorabilia. And you turn the ticket in, they give you a little pan pizza. But that's kind of off topic, but I thought it was just cool. So if you read books and had personal pan pizzas back in the 80s, shout outs to you for being a good reader. So that's really going to do it for this one this time. I mean it. That's going to do it for this one, guys. And as always, take care of yourself, protect your peace. God bless you, and we'll catch you next video. Thanks for watching.